Welcome to The Unlikely Executive, the podcast where passion meets purpose. Here we share stories of people who have transformed their lives and the world around them by following what truly drives them. I'm Barbara Carlisle, an executive coach and mentor for non-profits, and I help people who want to make a positive impact actually do it. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to The Unlikely Executive. Today, my guest is Leah Godfrey, Chief Operating Officer of Neurodiverse Sports, and has engagement with lots of other brilliant organisations, including Business of Women's Sports, which I'm sure we'll hear about shortly. So welcome, Leah. Nice to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for hosting me. I really appreciate it, Barbara.
First thing I'm going to ask you is, what are you currently doing in your day-to-day life that makes you an unlikely executive?
I'm definitely doing too much, but I don't know that it's unlikely. I think that I always intended to go out there and do as much as I could. And I think a little bit of that is, upbringing and psychology and neurodivergence, but I'm quite dedicated to whatever I do. And I only actually pick things that do good. So I could be making a lot more money selling oil somewhere, I'm sure.
Selling oil, yeah.
I don't know what people do that isn't good, but it's important to me because I'm so driven by work and I'm so passionate about the projects that I choose, that they feel ethical and viable and future focused. And that's sort of what gives me the power, I suppose, and strength to work as long as I do.
So can you tell me a little bit about Neurodiverse Sport and what its aim is and what impact that you're hoping to make?
It's funny, I do so much work in the gender and equity space in sport, and I didn't expect that I would end up in the neuro-inclusion space as well. But I have known Cara McMurtry, who's the founder of Neurodiverse Sport, for a couple of years now. We had a few wonderful conversations. I loved watching what she was up to. And it's based on her own experience and not being seen in a lot of ways. So she went out and kind of talked with everybody, connected with researchers, and tried to figure out how she could take data-driven insights and science and research to increase neuro-inclusion in sport. And she's done a brilliant job of it over the last 2 years. I came on board last August, and now together, I think she had written a 3-year strategy in June, and with both of us at the helm, because we're both quite focused on work, we're in the second year of our strategy, 6 months in. We do, everything from research to delivery to operations, advocacy, and are, currently really the leading think tank in this space, which is an honor to contribute to.
Yeah, amazing. And one could argue that perhaps that when the original strategy was written, it wasn't ambitious enough, or is it that the fact that your personality types really drive that change at a pace?
We do. I mean, we're a bit cheeky about stuff. Sometimes we're like, okay, we have to go do social stuff. All right, we'll see each other in a few hours. We are different than I think most people, but that's like the power of working in something that you love and something that makes a difference. And we get to do fun work, like work with Team GBs, but we also get to widen that entryway to sports at the grassroots level. Our work is sport agnostic, so it's nice that it has that wide impact. And I think when you work in that needs space, it drives you a little bit harder.
Absolutely. And can you just tell me, where does the Business of Women's Sport come into it? Is that part of another little arm of or what? Come on, share.
Sure. So Cara and I, obviously Cara is CEO of Neurodiverse Sport, and that's growing really quickly. We're sort of in the end run of funding for Sport England. And it's busy and it's wonderful. We've actually just been announced as the research partner to King's College.
Wow.
For the research advisory board on neurodiversity. So there are all these wonderful wins, but for me, like before I came on board with Cara, I was a little bit more focused on gender and racial equity. And I think that this would probably be this is like the third emerging industry that I've worked in, and it's such an interesting space and time when it happens. And right now we have all of these amazing female professionals in sport, but not a track record of commercial success or really widespread community success. And so Cara and I sort of looked at, the wider space and thought, what else can we do? And the Business of Women's Sports was about having a platform dedicated to our needs. Right now, when we show up at conferences or we're in mixed sex groups, the conversations about broadcast and media rights and sponsorship are stratospherically away from anything that most women in sport are working on. When you're talking about broadcast conversations, sponsorship at that super high level, and media rights, this affects less than 2% of the women's game. And I don't think it has a wider societal effect. So I think for us, we looked at what do we need in an emerging industry, and it's some of it is experts we don't need, and so that we don't have currently, like female brand experts who commercialize female brands, because that's what we are in a lot of ways. But I think also just understanding that you have to have a digital and social ecosphere to attract and nurture sponsorship, that there are ways on a shoestring budget to monetize what you do, to grow events, to sell merchandise, and to take those steps towards solvency and repositioning ourselves, not so much as sports clubs, but as community organizations. So the business of women's sports is a community where we want to provide all of those needs and also hear from the community about what they need. So it's really a facilitation. It's not my group or Cara's group. It's everyone's group.
It's facilitation. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's not the only thing you're involved in. There's Elle. Can you share a little bit about what that's about?
Elle is my storytelling and events brand. In one of my previous careers, I was an award-winning event director, and recently I've hosted the largest girls tournament in the history of London, and then also one of the biggest girls football festivals. I also do events, like support the event of Jess King, who does Black to the Future. And we've also been doing, actually, we did a concert with Jess King, and we've got Carrie Dunn, who's a best-selling author on the history of the lionesses. We've got a panel event coming up with her. So we also have a number of series of panels that feed bows as well, that have that information that we need. So Alt Owl was my way of telling the stories that I thought really mattered. I think maybe it's because we're getting older, but I guess I feel like that tie to the women who came before us, who worked in this space relentlessly. And I think the next generation need to know them. They need loads of skills to move forward. And so events for us are about connectivity. And then we're lucky to have a number of journalists, both interns, some volunteers, and some paid writers who do stories on just iconic change makers. So that could be, Tasha at Black Girls Run. I'm hoping to convince Susie Dick, who does mountaineering up in Scotland, to do a story. We did Team GB boxer Viv Parsons. So it's about understanding that in order to be solvent, and this isn't what everybody enjoys, but we need to kind of grow our personas. We need to get ourselves out there. We need to inspire the next generation. So Altel is meant to be a part of taking the socio-cultural revolution within women's sports and embedding it for wider societal change.
And I can see what you're saying about people may love sport, but they certainly don't see themselves as, a brand or premium, or, even though they might want sponsorship and seek it, it's just icky, isn't it, for a lot of people? Because you love what you love. You don't want to have to try to fit in with what the media or the brand agents want you to be. I think it's a really difficult dilemma, isn't it, for people? So you're there to support them in that journey and help them to embrace the opportunities that they have because of being brilliant at sport.
Absolutely. And I think, going on to a brand campaign and saying things that don't feel authentic to you shouldn't be the route forward. And by and large, in recent conversations with England rugby, England football, England cricket, I think the general consensus is that 60% of our fan base do not know the rules of the game. They're not interested in the rules of the game. They want to see Millie Bright making pancakes. And so actually, if you can grow confidence a little bit to just share your own lived experience, that's actually what people are interested in. But no, it's not very British. And I think that, there's a a humbleness and I find women, not as eager as American women to step into the spotlight, and finding that balance between self-confidence and not necessarily, arrogance or bravado is that space I try and nudge a lot of women into.
And why do you think that might be, that there's a difference culturally between American women and women in the UK?
Well, I think that I put a lot back to 1971 and 1972. These are there are really big feminist milestones, and in this country we unbanned football, and so we said we wouldn't arrest you if you played sports. And in the US we passed Title IX, which said you have an equal right to play sport. And both of these are huge milestones, but they had really different outcomes. So it means that when I played in the 80s, I had parity. The boys didn't have things that I didn't have. That wasn't something really on my mind. And I wouldn't say that we have total parity in the US by any stretch of the imagination, but it's probably 20 years ahead of where we are here. And so sport, as it turns out, which I wouldn't have known with a lifetime in food and charities, but sport, as it turns out, is one of the biggest confidence drivers in young women. And so when you think about growing up, you're with your family, and that defines who you are, and you head into school, and this is the most important place you'll spend the next 15 years of your life. It's everybody will ask you about it. We know how critical it is. And if you show up and you can't play your own sport, because only 50% of girls can play football in school right now, and that number is actually as high as it is because of the brilliant work of Barclays. But that lack of access in the school setting says, oh, maybe I'm not equal. Maybe it's not fair. In PE, they could be made to be wearing a skirt. They could be made to be wearing white shorts. They may not have the offerings that they want to play. And eventually, it just doesn't feel like a space that belongs to them. So my belief is, and this is why my work is sport agnostic, is that if girls can have access to sport, any sport, dance, physical activity, socialization, it grows confidence. And in the US, 90% of female CEOs played sport.
Wow.
So we know that this is a whole feminist trajectory in a lot of ways. So that's why, like, so much of my love is in the girls' game. I kind of hope I could be a little bit more successful running these different things in the women's game so that I could just volunteer my time. I love the girls' game so much.
But you have already volunteered your time in the girls' game. And do you want to tell me how that started when you came over from the US?
Sure. I was in the middle of doing a master's program at Sotheby's to go into to open a female-centric gallery. There'd been a lot of creative work throughout my life, and then I just started looking around a little bit more at sport, at my daughter's offerings as a high-level football player, and I immediately kind of thought, because I'm American, wow, like, we're 20 years behind, like, this is just not on. And I thought, these women must be so mad about the standard of play. And after about 6 months, I was like, no one's really that mad. And everybody's just getting
Just accept it. That's what we British just accept.
You just accept it. And it was like, yeah, it's not great that the pitch has holes in it. Yeah, this isn't great. Yeah, this isn't. But it was like, there's something more about participation here. There's a bigger community focus. There's a much higher percent of players who play social than competitive. And so I then spent about 2 years doing a pre-built master's program where I worked for free for everybody, consulted, volunteered, it could be a high level young founder scale, or it could be pumping balls. I feel as though if you're going to learn an industry, you should learn it from top to bottom. And that work is what helps you later on when you're part of much bigger initiatives. So yeah, it was about 2 years of volunteering and just trying to learn across the game, league chair roles, head of girls and women, CEO at tier 3 level. And yeah, I'm really grateful for that because I wouldn't have got it right otherwise. I needed to step back and learn.
Yeah, step back one day at a time, and the diversity of roles that were available, you grabbed them by the hand. And what happened to the masters?
Well, I have a lot of art around me that you can't see right now, but it's on almost every wall. Actually, very interestingly, like I connected because I wanted to do a female-centric gallery. I now have a global database of female graphic artists who I really like, and I'm actually working on a project with them in sport that I'm not talking about quite yet, but it's a way to work that in. So
yeah, who needs a master's when you can just have it as one of the things you're about to do? That's brilliant. I look forward to hearing about that in the future. Yeah, no, brilliant. And what would you say if you mentioned before that you've been in the food and was it retail industry?
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about why you went from the commercial world to the charity world?
Sure. I mean, I think with food, I didn't expect to fall in love with food. I was busy getting a sociology degree, and I just fell madly madly, deeply in love with it. And I'll almost well up. I miss being in food all the time. I never
Wow.
intended to leave. Being at Sotheby's was like, okay, I'll open a gallery and then I'll go build more brands in food is what I was thinking. And I miss it. It's just such a creative, gorgeous space with beautiful minds. And there's something about, I don't know, the constant evolution of it, along with the focus of organics and sustainability that really helped. I was a board member of a number of really great charities, from land trusts to food banks, and it felt hugely rewarding to me. Um, yeah, I went on to start multiple catering companies and really enjoyed that. Stepped back a little bit when I had my two children. I had really severe postpartum. And as it turns out, I think that because I'm a late in life neurodivergent diagnosis, I think that actually part of that might have been a bit of overwhelm.
Yeah.
um, and so, yeah, I've been just spent time thinking about, how do I want to go back into food and what does this look like? And that was the Sotheby's thing. I thought, I want to be more of a creative in food. I don't want to start another catering company. I can do operations, I can do finance, I can do governance, marketing, but I just wanted to fuel my creative side a little bit more. So, sorry, I'm being a little ADHD and I think I've not answered the question.
That's fine. I'm listening. That's
Okay.
absolutely wonderful.
Um,
And thanks for sharing about the postpartum, because that couldn't have been a particularly pleasant time for you or your family. And on that, thinking about the journey that you've been on, who do you have as your sort of stalwart person or persons you can lean on, and what is it that those persons give you that enable you to lean into them?
I have the perfect husband.
Woohoo!
I feel guilty saying that because I know it's a lot of work for most people, but I really lucked out with him, and I can't say that enough. I was lucky enough to be badly in love with him too, but I also just knew that he really understood me. He saw me, and I think that he was really accepting and has remained really accepting of how I work and the single-mindedness I can have about completing and launching and doing new things. There are a lot of people who wouldn't have the patience for that. There are a lot of people whose own egos could get in the way of stepping back and saying, okay, I've got dinner, you go do this. And I think he makes me feel really seen as a person when I have a wobble, which absolutely happens. And I just have a wonderful family in general, but I have two young kids that they're in college now, but we're really close to. And I have a sister who's like, the best gut check ever. She's incredibly successful in her own right, and we know each other quite well. And I can always call her and say, I need a little bit of help unpicking this. I need you to lift me up. I need you to help me move forward. And there's nothing she wouldn't do for me. So I think it's not about the volume of people, but the depth, right?
Yeah, yeah. The depth is going to be the important thing for sure. And how do you look after yourself? Because it sounds like there's lots going on for you, and work-life balance, even with the perfect husband, must be a struggle at times.
It is. And I guess what I would say is I'm not a role model in this space. I'm not, I'm not necessarily always getting it right. And I think a little bit of that is the ND sort of autism spectrum hyper focus and how deeply satisfying that is to focus on things. But I try and work around that now. So I actually have to set alarms to kind of eat. And again, like I think that this is not a neurotypical thing probably, but I have to set alarms to make sure that I eat. I tend to be really thoughtful about like when I hit a cognitive fatigue point. That is definitely a shutdown stage for me. If I feel like my work is compromised because I'm just too tired to think straight, I won't push that. Yeah, I think I haven't exactly found the balance, but part of that is, being part of neurodiverse sport, which is exploding with growth, working on a fan engagement platform behind the scenes that takes a tremendous amount of executive function and planning, even getting the business of women's sports right. I mean, all of having this many pots on is really challenging. And what I say to Cara, at Neurodiverse Sport, is there's a manic phase. It's very frenetic, and it's really kind of when you're getting it all right, but before you have funding and income and support. And so, we have like 6 free versions of a CRM we're gluing together right now. And that costs me and Cara as ND individuals. I think that's a little bit trickier for us. My NDness is not an excuse. I don't consider myself marginalized in any way. You don't get the blessing of like this level of executive function and complain about the fact that you can't wayfind. That would be ridiculous of me. For the most part, I'm so grateful for my brain, and I'm grateful for the insight that I have in it now. But yeah, I would say, I think once we get to funding stage on 2 more spaces and have a little bit more support, then I think in my mind, I kind of can allow myself like weekends off and things like that. But I wouldn't say I'm a role model in that part. Definitely don't do as I do. I'm just trying to get it right.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? So you can be inspiring without being the classic role model. No, I get that. Perfect. And how would you describe your leadership style, and has it always worked for you?
Oh, no, I've had to work on my leadership style a lot. And I think that part of it is and I wasn't really conscious of the reasons why this was, but I'm really direct. And in this country, that can also come off as abrasive, where in the US, I just kind of fit in a little bit more. So I think that directness, I am direct and to the point always, because my brain is always in factory production settings. How can I get this done the best way possible, the quickest way? And so I tend to just like be really direct all the time. And that can be misread and misunderstood. I think I needed to learn that. I was a leader really young. I was a director by 23. And a lot of people were older than me, and that was really hard to manage. So I would say the things about my leadership that I believe that I get right are meeting and getting to know people. I'm quite good at understanding what people will be successful at and what they won't be successful at, what they want to be successful at and can be nurtured towards. I'm quite conscious of how they receive praise and where it matters most to them, because sometimes like public praise actually matters a little bit more private praise. So I try and really balance like the needs of a volunteer or an employee or all the interns that I have with, how do I make them feel seen? How do I support them to become the best version of themselves? How do I be a port in the storm? And how do I not like be direct all the time?
And just on that directness and acknowledging that, I sometimes have coaching clients who say my boss is too directed. They make me feel like just not sufficient, and I start to go into my shell. It makes me curious as to how do you take feedback? So if you had somebody who was sort of overwhelmed by your directness and they felt comfortable enough because they built a relationship with you to say something, how do you take feedback of that nature?
Oh, that I'm just like, thank you. For the most part, if anybody can work up the courage to give feedback to someone who is outspoken like myself, that is a win for that person in general. And I want them to know I want more of that. Actually, I had a call this morning from a wonderful friend about the business of women's sports. And she was like, I don't think you've done this or that. And then someone was like, are you sure there's not too many questions in this? And I was like, thank you. Thank you so much for calling me with critical feedback. Because if people just call and go, it's great that you've done this, and they just leave it, but they're sitting there going, well, you might not have got it right though. So I really welcome feedback, and I tend to offer a lot of praise in that moment because I want it to kind of keep happening. I talk about being a direct person too, to try and help out and contextualize that. I explain that like my brain is like a heat seeking missile. So if I'm in a conversation, I'm trying to get to that answer as fast as possible. And I can often come off as being contrary. But what I'm trying to do is actually be contrary. I want you to argue back and say, no, Leah, this is why we should do it this way. And this is why I've done this. And I'm like, okay, but what about this? Like, and it sounds as though I'm not agreeing with you or not supporting you, but I'm just hoovering up data to get to that next stage. So I try and be honest and vulnerable about that. And as direct as I am, I know I'm quite loving and supportive and caring as well. And I try and balance those so that people know how I feel about them, and that might not always, it might not sound that way.
Yeah. There's a difference between what comes out of your mouth in a high pressure, creative environment and what you actually feel. And I think it's that building the trust before you need to have a direct conversation is really
Yeah.
valuable, isn't it? And have you ever experienced a time when things haven't gone your way in terms of building a charity or engaging in something that you thought was a great idea, but perhaps hasn't turned out to be?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, absolutely, I have, of course. I've had loads of failures, and I'm grateful for them because if they give you the context of how not to fail again if you're paying attention. But I've been reflective about that lately, actually, because I feel confident that I do my best as a leader and that I'm open to learning and improvement. And I also think that I'm a good employee. I actually love reporting into Cara, who's a really modern leader. And it's got a wide wheelhouse. I love reporting into strong women, but I'm not sure that I'm a great partner. And I think that I don't have unreasonable expectations of bosses and I don't have them of interns and employees and associates. But if somebody is meant to be my equal, it's a little bit challenging for me sometimes because most people don't want to work 12 hours a day. And so I don't know, maybe that's a little hard for me, but I've kind of stepped back from that after having two where I felt like maybe I hadn't got it right. Um, and maybe it hadn't been the right fit for me. And I thought maybe this is just not the role that I can be in.
Mm.
And my relationship with Cara has sort of given me a lot more confidence because although she's CEO, I think the relationship, we're just knee deep in it together right now. And the collaboration that we have, all of that works really well. But it bears in mind the variable that we're a lot alike too.
Yeah, and you don't know, do you, when you start off in good faith with a partner where you think, yeah, this is going to be great. And then for whatever reason and within whatever time frame, there's divergence, whether in working style or expectations or goals that just slowly bubble up to the top. And it can be quite harsh, can't you? And you blame yourself thinking,
I
should have
should have.
guessed, I should
Yeah.
have known. But we don't know until we've been through it. And like you say, failure is to be grateful for in many ways because you learn, don't you?
Absolutely. It's harder. It's not the way you want to learn, but I think that's the way you don't do it again. So I'm always grateful for those experiences. I think they're more insightful than winning.
They're just not nice at the time, though,
They're
are
just
they?
not nice. They're horrible.
Yeah. So we're coming to the end now, and I'm sure there'll be people who will want to keep in touch with you beyond this episode. How might people get in touch with you? What's the best way?
Probably via LinkedIn, I suppose. I have an Instagram, which is actually you and me both, mate, inspired by this poster. I've just moved over here. But that's not like that's just tiny little stories. So I think LinkedIn is where I try and share most of the things I'm across, what I'm trying to change, and how to get involved,
Yeah.
with the different work that I do, because there is so much volunteer work and opportunity to grow and contribute as well. So thank you for asking.
Yeah. And the final one is if people are listening and inspired by your story, what would you suggest as the first action they could take a step towards their own purpose and feeling passionate about life again?
Oh, what an interesting question. What step could they take? I mean, I suppose for me, it's a combination of like self reflection and pushing myself into a new environment. Quite conscious if I'm stalled or trying to find the route forward. Um, my whole life, I've gone and asked the ocean. Sort of going
Literally.
literally. Yeah, I've gone. I can't explain it, but you grew up on the ocean and rarely lived more than 10, 20 minutes from it, which is such a lucky thing to have in your life. But I think I'll do that, or I'll do something completely new. Like we had to, reset with one project in the autumn, and I took the interns, and we went to Daunt Books, we went to Egg Slut, and we went to the Photographer's Gallery. I was like, I need new environments and new spaces, and I need to be out of my own context. So I would say that's the thing that I do to kind of
Mm.
reset and find the road forward.
Yeah, and that's a really nice way to end it, that we can all look at how we best reflect and think. And sometimes it is getting out of our comfort zone, our house, which is so easy to stay in, or our local community. It's like
Yeah.
going to that. There's nothing like going to a beach and just seeing the expanse of the beach and thinking, I am a little tiny drop in this world. What, how can I make a big splash as a tiny drop?
It's so true. It's so true. I feel that too. I feel that, as you get a bit older, it's like, what is my legacy? What am I leaving? What will I have changed? And we know so much work was done by the women before us, and so much more of that goes on. And I just think, I hope I've lightened the load a little bit.
Yeah. No, I'm sure you have, and I look forward to watching it grow, the business of women's sport, for sure.
Thank you.
Inspiring, Leah. Many thanks for joining today.
I just want to say thank you because I really enjoyed these questions. I think that they're insightful and helpful, and I don't know, I think you've done a wonderful job with it.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to The Unlikely Executive. If today's conversation sparked a new idea, inspired a shift, or gave you the nudge to step into your purpose, embrace it and take action. Remember to like, share and subscribe so you don't miss opportunities that can transform the way you lead, work and live your life. I'm Barbara Carlisle, Executive Coach, Mentor and Trainer. You can find my details in the show notes, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about the show and about your own journey. Until next time, take that step to be more authentically you, live your purpose and enjoy making a positive impact.